They've been hidden, erased, and denied, but the truth has a way of resurfacing. We've uncovered a cache of UFO videos leaked from the depths of government archives that they never wanted you to see. These aren't blurry blobs or distant lights. This is undeniable evidence of unidentified aerial phenomena that defy explanation. Watch them now before they disappear forever.
Sighting. Middletown was shaken by an extraordinary event last month as residents reported witnessing a display of rotating green lights hovering above them. The inexplicable sighting, which occurred around 10:30 p.m., left many in awe and pondering the possibility of extraterrestrial activity. One individual, Caden Little, managed to capture the event on video while on Jerry Couch Boulevard. Caden described his initial reaction as a mix of fear and fascination, exclaiming, "I instantly thought like we're under attack by aliens. It was scary." Fortunately, the lights abruptly disappeared without any hostile action, providing some relief. Eyewitnesses, including Bryce Garrick, observed the lights rotating in a clockwise motion before swiftly darting across the sky and vanishing. The bewildering speed at which the lights maneuvered ruled out the possibility of drones, according to Brian Simpson, president of the Cincinnati Astronomical Society. So what was it? Who knows, but my bet is aliens. Number 9. The Coyne Incident. At 7:30 p.m. on October 18, 1973, American Airlines Flight 21 encountered a UFO near Mansfield, Ohio, and reported it. This would be the first of dozens of sightings reported in the area that night. However, the most astonishing one took place 3 hours later and became known as the Coyne Incident. Sometime after 10:30 p.m., an Army Reserve helicopter piloted by Captain Lawrence Coyne and a crew of 3 men was flying from Columbus to Cleveland when, somewhere around Mansfield, they noticed a red light on the horizon. They then realized that the object was heading straight for them at a high rate of speed. Coyne quickly descended to avoid collision, but as the men were preparing for impact, the object came to a halt in front of them and projected a green, pyramid-shaped beam over the helicopter. At the same time this was happening, the men reported the helicopter being pulled up and towards the UFO. However, it then let go and darted out of sight. The incident lasted 5 minutes. The men described a gray, metallic-looking dome-shaped object with a red light on one end and white light on the other. Now, interestingly, after the incident, according to one crew member, the helicopter never worked right again. Now, this whole incident was seen from the ground by a mother and her 2 children who pulled their car over to watch what was going on. They reported seeing the helicopter chasing an object that they said looked like limp, pear-shaped, and as big as a school bus. Number 8. Earliest photographs. A photo taken in St. Paris, Champaign County in 1932 is considered one of the earliest possible photographs of a UFO ever recorded. It shows George Sutton, a local resident, and what appears to be a classic UFO-shaped object over his left shoulder. Skeptics say the object is simply a street lamp, but according to the folklore that surrounds this image, there were no electric streetlights along this road in 1932, nor are any wires or poles visible in the image. Now, this photo is intriguing because it predates the flying saucer craze of the late 1940s and 50s. It was taken before the alleged Roswell UFO crash in 1947, and it was 6 years prior to the broadcast of the War of the Worlds in 1938, when some people believed aliens were attacking Earth. In other words, the person who took this photograph either captured a street lamp, a real UFO, or was way ahead of the curve in terms of pulling off a good hoax. But I'd like to think it's a real UFO. Number 7. The Carnival. As a way to raise money, Father Gregory Miller decided to host a carnival in August of 1949. The church sought help from Sergeant Donald R. Berger, and on the first night of the carnival, sometime after 8 p.m., he was operating the searchlight when it came upon a massive object in the sky. His log states the object was stationary, appearing as a glowing disc. When I moved the searchlight away, the disc continued to glow. He estimated the object to be around 25,000 feet high and reported that the sky was clear with a thin haze at altitude. More than 100 people saw the object that night, including Father Miller. Maybe nothing more would have come from this incident, but the next day, local newspapers carried stories about strange lights being reported all over Cincinnati, not just at the carnival. At least 3 major newspapers in the area ran stories about the sightings, so it definitely was something. Number 6. 86-mile police chase. In Portage County in 1966, law enforcement officers from several jurisdictions either witnessed or chased a UFO for 86 miles into Pennsylvania. The incident is considered one of the most thoroughly documented UFO cases on record. Portage County Sheriff Deputy Dale Spar and Second Deputy named Wilbur Neff came upon the UFO around 5:30 a.m. on April 17th. They were investigating an abandoned vehicle and they heard a humming or buzzing noise behind them, and they turned to see a UFO hovering just above a nearby tree line. A bright cone-shaped light came from beneath the object, illuminating the ground. They called into dispatch, which told them to keep an eye on the object. Just then, the object began to quickly move away. The two decided to give chase, and near the state line, a local police officer saw the object, followed by Spar and Neff chasing it. He decided to join in on the action. However, a short time later, just as the sun was rising, Spar began to run out of gas, so he and Neff and the local police officer pulled into a gas station, where they watched the object ascend several thousand feet into the sky and then straight into outer space, and, well, that was that. Number 5. October 11th, 1973. October 11th was quite the night for Ohio residents, as there were many UFOs spotted. In Dayton, at least 15 sightings were reported. Many witnesses reported seeing objects covered with red, green, and blue lights hovering over treetops in the area. A Montgomery County Sheriff's deputy reported seeing an oblong object covered with lights that appeared stationary in the sky at treetop level for several minutes until he tried to shine his cruiser's spotlight on it. It then zoomed towards him and then shot straight up in the sky. Then in Troy, according to an article in the Columbus Dispatch from October 12, 1973, titled UFO Reports Proceed Boom, on October 11th, Troy patrolman Early Thomas and about 100 Troy residents said they watched a hovering red, green, and white object move across the southeastern sky. Now, just to note, this happens to be the direction of Wright-Patterson. About 15 minutes later, law enforcement agencies in Miami, Champaign, and Logan counties received hundreds of telephone calls after a sonic boom was heard. They received more calls when a second sonic boom was heard just after midnight, and it seems like the aliens had something special planned for that day to me. Number 4. Trumbull County UFO Incident. Featured on the History Channel and numerous UFO documentaries, the Trumbull County UFO incident in northeast Ohio is exceptional because it was witnessed by numerous police officers and a 911 dispatcher, all of whom were being recorded as they spoke back and forth about the strange events unfolding the evening of December 14th, 1994. It was also seen by many members of the public as well. Now, around midnight, Trumbull County 911 began receiving calls from residents about strange low-flying lights in the sky. The dispatcher sent out Liberty Townsend police officers to investigate. One of them was Sergeant Toby Melrose, who saw a light. He got out of his car and looked up to see what he described as a giant circular-shaped object and intensely bright in the center section. It made no sound at all. The object was there for about 30 seconds before moving away. Shaken, Sergeant Melrose decided to chase the object, as did many other police officers in the area. At least 14 law enforcement officers saw the object that night, with all of them discussing it openly on their radios. Number 3. 1973. There were many UFO sightings in 1973 in Ohio and its surrounding states. For example, in Columbus on September 30th, a Franklin County man claims to have discovered a landing site near his home after seeing a strange object in the sky. Weeds at the alleged site are crushed to the ground in a semi-oval area 20 by 30 feet wide. The man says the object whooped down in a zigzag pattern and dropped below the trees. There are several dozen sightings of strange objects in the sky reported in the area that night. Then in Middletown on October 7th, a giant orange-colored cigar-shaped object with 5 discs following it and making no sound is reported flying over the city at 10 p.m. Many people see it, and Wright-Patterson receives numerous calls. Now, these are just 2 examples of that year, but there are many, many more. Number 2. Circleville. On August 26, 2022, Pete Hartinger said UFOs were spotted in the area. An expert on the topic who has seen a UFO with his own eyes, Pete said several people reported seeing UFOs between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., including a man who saw something in the sky as he was traveling on US 23 north of Circleville. He saw strange lights, and going on down, he saw some more strange lights. He knows some other people who saw them too, he said. The man said it wasn't right the way the lights were acting. The lights came down, hit the ground, and went back up, so so forget about them being flares. Pete said the man, who wishes to remain anonymous, reported what he saw to the Roundtown UFO Society, a local group dedicated to studying these matters. Anybody who has seen strange, mysterious lights that have been in the sky, please let us know, he said. He said at least half a dozen people saw the lights. One person said they saw orange lights over the fairgrounds, he said, and another person said he saw some military aircraft coming in after he saw those lights. Were they coming in to investigate, or what? Since 1947, there have been several sightings of UFOs in the Circleville area, which is strange. And coming in at number 1 is Ohio is a beacon. According to the Mutual UFO Network of Ohio, MUFON, the state ranks among the top 10 states in UFO reports. Thomas Wortman with the MUFON said, "It's all sorts of things we get. We get the individual who is out walking their dog at night who reports seeing unusual lights that they just can't explain. They see the lights for a few seconds or minutes and they just want an answer." Now, the majority of these reports come from Northeast Ohio, and Thomas says about 80% of what comes in the agency can be explained, but about 20% and up being classified as UFOs. Now, if you're waiting for the government to admit that aliens do exist, don't hold your breath, because the Time reports that the Pentagon isn't going to say that. But my question is, what is so special about Ohio?
So we're starting off with a photo that was apparently lost for decades, but just resurfaced a few years ago. The Calvine photo, said to be one of the most convincing UFO photographs ever taken. On August 4th of 1990, two men who were working as chefs in a hotel in the Scottish Highlands decided to go for a walk that summer evening in the hills near Calvine. And in the middle of their hike, they spotted something in the sky, this big diamond-shaped object hovering up there. Apparently it made little to no noise as well. They managed to snap this picture here. The hikers sent the image to the paper, but instead of printing it, the newspaper handed it over to the British Ministry of Defence, and they kept it under wraps until 2022, when British journalist David Clark finally brought it back into the light. After digging for 13 years, Clark, who teaches at Sheffield Hallam University, discovered that a former Royal Air Force press officer, Craig Lindsay, had a copy of the photo all along, waiting for someone to ask about it. Clark also had his colleague Andrew Robinson, a photography expert, examine the photo. Robinson found no evidence of tampering or manipulation. So, is this flying object of extraterrestrial origin? Well, Clark believes it is a genuine UFO, just maybe not an alien aircraft. He thinks it could be the rumored Aurora, a super secret spy plane supposedly built by the US in the 80s.
Next up on our list today, we have a series of photographs of real-life aliens found in 2017 in Peru near the pre-Columbian Nazca lines. Analysis done on the body of the aliens, named Clara and Mauricio, showed that they are at least 1,000 years old and that their genetic makeup is not of this world. Although the findings are controversial, that's to be expected, and widely disputed, also expected, many people believe that Clara and Mauricio are modern civilization's first look at real-life humanoid alien bodies, and they see the discovery as a major scientific advancement in relation to our understanding of extraterrestrial beings. The lead researcher on the case said that the bodies, with 3 fingers on each hand and elongated heads, were found with another, going by the name of Victoria, which was used to conduct the tests that determined the age of the bodies and the genetic material. In the report, lead researcher Musan also stated that Victoria had been carrying eggs inside of her, meaning that it was likely these creatures were able to reproduce offspring, and that Victoria was getting ready to when she died. Whether or not the whole thing is a big elaborate hoax remains to be seen. However, despite harsh criticism coming from Musan's peers and the scientific community as a whole, he continues to maintain the validity of his findings, making this kind of believable.
Take a look at these wild photos. These are some genuinely unsettling images right here. There's a lot of mystery behind these pictures. There's still no definitive explanation for them. All we know is that the photos surfaced about 10 years back. Supposedly, they were taken from a US submarine traveling between Iceland and islands near Norway. Alex Mistretta, a paranormal investigator, started looking into these pictures after they popped up in a French magazine called Top Secret, following a supposed leak. The photos were allegedly snapped in March of 1971 through the submarine USS Trepang's periscope during a regular military and science science mission. A guy named John Kalika first spotted the UFOs through the periscope. We don't know who actually took the images. The pics were shared to the public by Alex after he saw them in that magazine, and there were some curious notes on the back of one of the photos. It said official photograph, not to be released, CT, and another note that read unauthorized disclosure subject, security certificate SSN 674, criminal sanction. I don't know, what do you guys think of these? Genuine, hoax? I mean, some of these images are pretty insane. I mean, if they weren't doctored in any way.
Next on our list today, we have the McMinville UFO photographs taken in none other than Sheridan, Oregon, approximately 9 miles southwest of McMinville by a local farming couple, Paul and Evelyn Trent. On May 11th of 1950, the pair spotted these strange objects in the sky and rushed to grab their camera. They then captured some of the most captivating UFO images to date. It was Evelyn who first noticed the alleged spacecraft hovering in the sky above the farm. She yelled for her husband Paul, who also confirmed the sighting and was the one to capture the images. Paul's father also claimed to have caught a glimpse of the object before it sped off into the sky. Don't know why I did that. A third-party analysis confirmed that the photographs were not doctored and that they showed a real physical object in the sky above the Trent family farm, and that the object was sitting at a significant distance from the lens of the camera. So basically, it was proven that it wasn't just some kind of bug flying nearby the lens. Whether or not you believe in aliens, UFOs, or UAPs, you gotta admit these images are pretty cool.
In 2023, the Pentagon released footage that was taken in the Middle East the previous year. The footage was captured on July 12th, 2022 with an MQ-9 Reaper drone. They're still not sure what this object is. The mysterious orb footage was shown to a congressional committee as part of a defense update on UFOs or UAPs. We can clearly see a small round object that looks like it's shimmering as it flies over houses and empty fields. Sean Kirkpatrick, who heads the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the AARO, mentioned that this footage is pretty much all the info they have on this thing. They don't know where it came from or what its purpose was. The Pentagon also disclosed that they were looking into over 650 incidents involving UFOs.
Next up, if we are going to do a video about real alien photos, I feel it's only right to include a photograph of the most famous UFO sighting and interaction to date, the Battle of Los Angeles, or the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, which took place on February 23rd of 1942, just 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The night the photo was taken, all of Los Angeles was directed to go under blackout by the US military. After all the lights on the ground turned off, the sky above LA was suddenly lit up by a large handful of strange, unidentified flying objects. The military then opened fired into the sky, and the public watched in utter shock as 1,400 rounds of ammunition fired at the airborne, seemingly extraterrestrial objects appeared to have no effect whatsoever. Smoke filled the sky, and when it cleared, not a single craft was to be found in the sky or on the ground. 5 civilians died after being hit by materials that appeared to have ricocheted off of the intended targets. 3 were killed in car accidents due to the chaos of the event, and 2 more died of heart attacks due to the stress of the event, which was 2 hours long in total. If this isn't legit, I don't know what is. That's pretty crazy.
Next up, we have some mysterious UFO footage that was taken in Wales. So in September of 2016, a police helicopter flying over the Bristol Channel in Wales around 9 p.m. spotted something in the sky. It was only visible on the chopper's thermal camera, cruising at about 106 miles per hour against the wind. Former cop Gary Haseline later released the full video footage, urging the UK government to come forward with whatever they knew about UFOs. Of course, they didn't. Police thought it could have been a drone at first, but the object was moving pretty fast. faster than any known models at the time. Apparently the thing was picked up by local air traffic control and emitted heat. Hasteline stated, "This is verified police helicopter FLIR footage showing an object not seen with the naked eye but clearly seen in the infrared spectrum. It is moving against the wind, so it is not a balloon, nor is it emitting any heat signature indicating a propulsion system."
Next up, we have a photograph taken on May 1st of 1952 at 7:58 a.m. by George Adamsky, who claims to have seen multiple UFOs flying over his backyard in Mount Palomar during the 1940s all the way through to the 1960s. Although many renowned UFO experts have been unable to back his claims, Adamsky maintains firm in his belief that he was able to capture not only this image of a cigar-shaped mothership flying in front of the moon seen here, but also the image of 6 unidentified flying objects he believes to be alien spacecrafts arising from the moon and flying in formation, which you can now see here. These images gained such notoriety in their time that for a while a rendering of the 6 spacecraft photograph was featured in a postage stamp in Grenada in 1978. Not only did Adamsky claim to have taken a number of other images, which were unfortunately destroyed, he also claimed to have communicated with the aliens aboard these ships using symbols, hand gestures, and even telepathy. Whether or not he's telling the truth, I personally believe he would make a hell of an entertaining dinner guest.
This footage was captured in 2004 by Mexican Air Force pilots. They'd been on a routine flight when they spotted several glowing objects on their infrared cameras. They couldn't actually see the objects with the naked eye. There were 13 of these objects in total, flying over the skies of southern Campeche state. This is a solid piece of footage right here. At one point we get a nice long look at the glowing objects flying in perfect formation across the sky, and yeah, I don't know what they are. I mean, I'm not an expert or anything, but the pilots also had no idea what they were picking up and tried to pursue the objects, but they just lost track of them. They flew away at incredible speed. The footage wasn't released until 2010, and ever since, it's been cited as one of the most convincing examples of a genuine piece of UFO footage.
And finally, we have some more video footage coming to us straight from the declassifieds. I'm talking about UFO documents released to the public by the Pentagon after so many years of adamantly denying the existence of such phenomena. On January 15th of 2023, cameras were set up to survey an MQ-9 Reaper aircraft when all of a sudden, an unidentified aerial presence was captured on that same video, moving at speeds unreachable by any kind of modern-day aircraft. It was shocking to say the least, but it actually gets crazier. The object was moving so fast that it appeared to actually disrupt the atmosphere surrounding the craft, leaving behind an atmospheric wake in lieu of a jet stream as it disappeared completely into the sky. It sounds pretty unbelievable, but as I said, the footage was literally released by the Pentagon, who have done a complete 180 on their denial of UFOs and have now actually asked the public to come forward and submit any authentic images or encounters with UFOs or UAPs to the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the ADARO. But I would personally love it if you shared any stories you have down below.
And we're going to start things off with Point Doom underwater base. So off the coast of Point Doom in Malibu, there seems to be this mysterious structure lying about 6 miles underwater. Images captured on Google Earth show an oval-shaped object resting on the seabed floor. Looks like it has a large flat top and what seems to be pillars or columns. Looking at it, it definitely looks like the entrance to something. It sits about 2,000 feet beneath the ocean surface, spanning nearly 3 miles in width, and some speculate that it could be more than just a naturally formed structure. And yes, some even think it could be an underwater alien base. Jimmy Church, who hosts a California-based radio show called Fade to Black, was pretty excited about the images, stating, "My first impression was that it was Greek. It looked artificial and didn't look natural. When you're looking at it from above, it's a nearly perfect oval shape. In the natural surroundings, nothing is symmetrical. Everything is eroded and covered in rocks and sloping and peaking. And right here, for 2 miles, it is a perfect oval with a black separation or outline to it. It just stands out. that it has to be some type of roof. It's not unlike a domed stadium or a covered indoor racetrack or an Olympic arena. It's got that feel to it. It looks like a perfect oval man-made structure sitting on a construction site. Next up, we have the Solomon Islands UFOs. There have been some very strange things said to go on here for hundreds and hundreds of years, and not only have locals claimed to see strange lights in the sky, but also coming up from under the water as well, which has led to a pretty intense theory that there could be an underwater alien base there. There have always been local legends of monstrous giants on the islands, 10-foot tall, hairy creatures with flat noses and glowing red eyes. That, combined with the reports of strange lights in the sky, moving with incredible speed and agility, could mean there may be some kind of connection here. You see, some of these lights and strange flying objects have been seen descending down into the trees of the Guadalcanal or rising up from the ocean and zipping around before diving back down. There are also legends that these giants that are said to live on the island move around through subterranean tunnels. So some speculate that beneath the surface of the ocean is this hidden structure where extraterrestrial beings may be conducting their activities. Next up, we have Hy-Brasil, a small mythological island off the coast of Ireland. According to Celtic folklore, this island is said to lie off the west coast of the country, appearing only every 7 years, usually surrounded by mist. The island is often described as a paradise with advanced technology and a society living in total harmony with nature. Sailors and explorers have reported spotting the island for centuries, claiming to have seen strange creatures and these glowing godlike beings there. Maps from the 14th to the 19th centuries often included Hy-Brasil, but its exact location was always a bit of a mystery. Now, of course, it sounds like complete folklore, which Celtic culture is absolutely full of, but what if there's something else going on here? Well, some have suggested that the islands appearing and disappearing could have an extraterrestrial connection. The idea is that aliens could be using advanced cloaking technology or have a hidden base on or beneath the island, and the mysterious creatures that some sailors claimed to have seen on the island do sound like they could be alien-like, but it's still a total mystery as to what they'd be doing over there. Next up on the list, we have strange skulls that were found in an underwater cave in Mexico. So in 2012, divers were exploring a cenote in the Yucatan Peninsula where they came across two chambers full of human bones, and some of these bones were human skulls, but there was something off about them. They were elongated. Now, the ancient Maya were said to have performed human sacrifices in the area, and skull deformation was also practiced in various parts of Mexico way back when. There are theories as to why, but nothing entirely concrete. One idea is that high-ranking members of society had elongated skulls. Some say that people's skulls were elongated just to differentiate certain groups from one another, but there's also the theory that these skulls never belonged to human beings at all. Pretty common knowledge, of course, that there are tons of conspiracy theories surrounding the ancient Maya, including the presence of extraterrestrials that may have helped them construct all their intricate advanced cities. So could these skulls have belonged to these supposed alien beings? It's possible. Next up, we have the Lake Baikal incident. So this lake in southern Siberia is the world's largest freshwater lake by volume. It's incredibly deep, and there are some pretty eerie stories about it. First of all, there's all the mysterious lights that are reported, not just hovering or flying above it, but also coming from the depths of the water. And there's a very creepy story that was supposedly an attempted cover-up by the Russian government. So in 1982, a team of Navy divers were doing a routine diving exercise in the lake when a number of them started spotting something pretty disturbing. There were all these figures deep under the water. They were tall and slender, well over 6 feet tall, and wearing what looked to be silver suits. Those suits could have also been silvery scales. They also had large, circular, glowing, unblinking eyes. The creatures began chasing after the divers, or swimming after them, rather, and the divers panicked and then swam back up to the surface, and they reported what they'd seen to their superiors, but that's where the story ends. The existence of the strange creatures has never been confirmed or denied. Next up, we have underwater alien bases is in Alaska. So claims of alleged alien bases lurking beneath the waters off the coast of Alaska have been around for quite a while, but in recent years the idea of them has become more of a popular thing, mostly thanks to ancient aliens. Thank you, ancient aliens. But apparently there are even eyewitness accounts dating back several decades which have been mostly undisclosed until recently. UFOologists and UFO enthusiasts have now been turning their attention to the mysterious activities in the waters of Alaska. One incident dates back to 1945 when crew members of a ship reported spotting an unidentified craft. Researchers, including members of MUFON, or the Mutual UFO Network, which is a non-profit organization that studies reported UFO sightings, they think it's possible that extraterrestrial beings have been constructing bases beneath the ocean's surface, and that's because there are tons of reports of UFO movements over the water. There were also a number of UFO sightings in the 40s that weren't disclosed to the public at the time. These undisclosed reports allegedly provide evidence that there are extraterrestrial entities operating in the waters off the coast of Alaska. This next story comes to us from Reddit, and although what this person saw wasn't technically under the water, it was floating just above it, and it's a pretty fascinating account. The story comes to us from user Keslow, who writes, I used to live in Charleston, South Carolina back around 2006, and I had a job that had me leaving home at about 4 a.m. I lived in a bad part of town near the International Airport Joint Base, so when I left, I did a scan of the area before getting into my car. One morning I stepped out of my home to do my scan and noticed that there were thin wispy clouds flowing in off the ocean. Basically it was a thin fog about 1,000 to 1,500 feet up, moving like a river. I also noticed at this point that there were two effing moons. One is obscured by the thin clouds, our real moon, and the other is most definitely under the clouds. It was a sphere of glowing white light. It made no sound and did not move. After about 2 minutes, it bolted eastward towards the ocean. The glowing light faded quickly right as it took off as well. I've seen planes move near the speed of sound, and this thing went from 0 to like 3,000 miles per hour instantly. No acceleration. Much faster than the speed of sound with no sonic boom. I hope I don't see it again, especially on the water. I always wondered if it bolted because they saw me watching them. Next up, we have the strange reports of a large disc-like object being spotted in the Indian Ocean. Apparently as far back as 1873, ships sailing the Indian Ocean from the Persian Gulf to the South China Sea have reported spotting a massive mile-wide disc passing beneath their boats, accompanied by large, rotating lights. One of the earliest documented sightings happened on March 23rd of 1873, when the ship Adelaide traversed the South China Sea. Witnesses reported floating over a huge, glowing circular object beneath the ocean's surface. On May 15th, 1879, the crew of the HMS Vulture described the sighting of two large Ferris wheels spinning in opposite directions. The spokes of these wheels were reported to be 25 feet wide, with 100 feet of space between them. There have been tons of these reports in various locations in the Indian Ocean, over the years. On April 4th, 1901, for example, in the Persian Gulf, the crew of the SS Kilwa claimed to see rays of light emanating from an underwater disc-like object. And even in 1943, in the Persian Gulf, a sailor named Matthew Mangle reported a huge glowing disc beneath the water's surface, pacing his ship. And these are just a handful of examples. And coming in at second place is the Michigan Stonehenge. So in 2007, a professor of underwater archaeology, Mark Hawley, made a pretty incredible discovery. It was this arrangement of stones lying on the lake bed, looking a lot like Stonehenge in England. The stones are laid out in a circular pattern, and some even appear to be arranged in a line. They're about 40 feet below the surface of the lake. So what was the purpose of this formation? Could it be the remnants of an an ancient civilization? Could extraterrestrials have constructed it thousands of years ago? They look like they've been placed in a pretty precise pattern. Doesn't look to be natural forming to me. And of course, there's also a rock with a mastodon carved into it. Hard to believe something like that would be created naturally. What's also really fascinating is that these stones are believed to be about 9,000 years old, predating Stonehenge by about 4,000 years. And finally, it's only natural that we finish things off with what has to be the most famous strange object discovered deep beneath the sea, the Baltic Sea anomaly. So back in the summer of 2011, a team of Swedish treasure hunters didn't come across any treasure in terms of monetary gain anyway, but they did find something pretty cool, a sonar image that seems to show a strange UFO-like object on the sea floor. Peter Lindbergh, the leader of the treasure hunting team, would be so awesome just to be able to say you're the leader of a treasure hunting team. I could say that and I'd just be like digging through my backyard finding nothing. But this guy actually goes out on boats and submarines and does it. I didn't get that job. Anyway, he's the leader of Ocean X and was pretty astonished by what he had found, saying the object definitely didn't look like a natural formation. And even though a number of researchers have come out and said it probably is a natural formation, I still get excited looking at this thing. I don't know, I'm just not entirely convinced. I'm on the fence about this one. But what do you guys think? Alien craft, ancient artifact, just some mundane natural formation? Let us know down in them comments.
The first image is a screen grab from a video filmed by a US Marine officer on the 20th of April in 2021 on a military base in 29 Palms, California. After the release of the photograph, multiple Marines came forward to confirm the existence of an aircraft, saying that while the photo showcases only the triangle-shaped formation of bright lights, in person the men were able to make out the black body of the aircraft as well. The unidentified flying object is said to have hovered for 10 minutes in the air before it suddenly vanished without any trace. The men were able to rule out flares for being the cause of the mysterious lights, but were never able to figure out exactly what they saw that night. However, it appears the footage has not been taken lightly, as the Pentagon has started an investigation into just what exactly was seen on the night of April 20th of 2021 in the skies above the 29 Palms military base. Next up, we have a series of photographs taken by cosmonaut Ivan Vanger in August of 2020 whilst aboard the International Space Station that appears to depict 5 unidentified flying objects flying at the same speed while maintaining the same distance between each other as well as their surroundings, moving in a straight line just above the Earth's curved horizon visible in the night sky. Vangar, both surprised and curious, took to Twitter, now named X, to share the footage in hopes of getting some clarity as to exactly what he was looking at. In an exciting unfolding of events, his tweet was picked up by the Russian space agency Roscosmos, and a spokesperson revealed that experts were in fact studying the video in an attempt to determine what exactly Vangar had managed to capture. Did you guys know that Japan was a major hotbed for UFO activity? Because I didn't. But apparently the Pentagon does? In fact, UFO sightings are so common in Japan that its military has reportedly ordered all pilots to disclose any and all identified flying objects directly to the Japanese government. Not only that, but Japanese self-defense forces have also undergone extensive training in relation to UFO sighting protocol. To date, 6 alleged encounters between pilots and UFOs have been reported to the Japanese government, one of which was recorded, and depicts 10 white circular balls flying through the skies of Osaka in Japan. While the government has yet to publicly comment on any of the incidents, the update of self-defense protocol alone is pretty telling. The next image was shared by a pretty reputable source, National Geographic. The image was captured by Sergio Loaiza on September 4th of 1971 during an aerial survey of Lake Cote. Everything seemed pretty normal until the photos were taken back to Loaiza's development lab, where he noticed something very strange. A metallic flying aircraft, estimated to have a diameter of 160 feet, was located in the corner of one of the photographs. When he presented the photos to his superiors at the National Geographic Institute, they shut him down quick, forbidding Sergio as well as his colleagues from sharing any information of what they had seen that day. In 1979, however, the photograph was leaked, and the object that appeared in the image was officially classified as an unidentified flying object. In 2021, the existence of the object was again confirmed after the original copy of the photograph was scanned, and it was revealed that the UFO's presence was more than just a scratch on the lens or a piece of dust in the wind. So what do you think it was? Let us know in the comments. Next up, we have footage that comes to us straight from the declassifieds. Remember how I told you at the beginning of the video that the government quite literally copped to the fact that they have been hiding the existence of UFOs for years? Well, they did, and they came with receipts. On the 15th of January in 2023, while surveilling an MQ-9 Reaper aircraft, an unidentified aerial presence was captured moving at speeds unreachable by any of Earth's modern-day technological advances. Not only this, but as the object whizzed through the field of view of the camera lens, it appeared to leave behind an atmospheric wake before disappearing completely into the sky. Guys, if you have any, please leave your UFO and alien stories in the comments. I would love to hear about your experiences with any of these kind of things. Next up, we have arguably the most beautiful alien-assuming photograph I have ever seen. The photo was taken in 2004 by a retired Royal Air Force officer while on vacation in Sri Lanka. The sight was described as some kind of colorful giant donut in the sky with hues of oranges, pinks, purples, and whites. After its capture, the photograph was turned into the Royal Air Force Flying Dales Base in North Yorkshire in England, where it became a classified document held by the Ministry of Defense. The image has since been declassified, of course, and is now available for public viewing, but there is still a lot of mystery surrounding the photo as well as the photographer, as his identity, along with any other information regarding the incident, is pretty much non-existent. I mean, come on, it's a giant glowing light in the sky. You're really telling me no one else saw this and that there's no other information out there other than the fact that the photo exists? Oh, yeah, and not only that, but it was deemed classified by the British Ministry of Defense, so I'm thinking there's something else going on here. Okay, I bet you didn't know that another major hotbed for extraterrestrial, UFO, and unidentified aerial phenomenon activity was Brazil. I mean, I did, but maybe you didn't. In fact, this kind of thing is so popular in Brazil that they have an annual day of recognition for these sightings known as the Night of the UFO, which came to be after a major event took place in 1986. On the night of May 19th, a series of unidentified flying objects were seen in the skies of Brazil, and even more non-visual objects were detected via radar across the skies of 4 Brazilian states. Of course, at this time, any and all knowledge the government had on the event was extremely classified. In May of 2012, however, Brazil's Freedom of Information Act went into place, after which the public demanded the release of all the documents relating to the incident. The government complied, and not only released written documents of the events, but also a series of photographs depicting strange activity within the skies above Brazil. Although the images of what appeared to be nothing more than squiggles and clouds of smoke didn't provide much clarity, a statement made by the Minister of Aeronautics did. He said, "This command is of the opinion that the phenomena are solid and reflect, in a certain way, intelligence, due to the ability to follow and maintain a distance from observers, as well as to fly information." After this statement was made, the Brazilian government has still not been able to confirm exactly what took place the day the Night of the UFOs was born. Next, we have a photo taken in 1990 by 2 Scottish chefs who were working in a hotel near the area in which the photograph was taken. After a long day of work, it appears the 2 men had decided to take a hike in an attempt to blow off some steam. While this walk wouldn't end up being incredibly relaxing, it would be wildly exciting, as not long after the 2 men had set off on their journey along the Calvine Scottish countryside, they noticed something hovering above them in the sky. The object was not one that either of the men could identify, and so they pulled out their cameras in an attempt to document the 100-foot flying aircraft instead. The photos, which have been analyzed and show no signs of manipulation, capture the object being circled by a jet plane. They thought the incident was incredibly strange and even newsworthy, so the 2 turned the footage over to the local newspaper for publication, but the images were seized by the British Ministry of Defense and were never released. until 32 years later, that is, by David Clark, who, unbeknownst to the ministry, had kept a photocopy of one of the original images. The identity of the two men was never revealed, nor did they ever come forward to share their story after the images had been seized by the ministry, begging the question of what exactly they saw and what exactly the government was trying to cover up. A photograph taken of an unidentified aircraft lit up by military spotlights in Los Angeles, California, is next on the list. The photograph, which documents an event so big it later became referred to as the Battle of Los Angeles or the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, was taken on February 23rd of 1942, just 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor. On the night the photo was taken, all of Los Angeles was under blackout, as directed by the US military. While the lights on the ground had been turned off, the sky above had been lit up by a myriad of strange objects. The military opened fire, and onlookers stood absolutely stunned as 1,400 rounds of ammunition appeared to have no effect on the unidentified flying object. Smoke filled the sky, and when it cleared, not a single craft was to be found in the sky or on the ground. Shrapnel that appeared to have ricocheted off the target resulted in the death of 5 civilians. Furthermore, 3 were killed in car accidents due to the chaos of the event, and 2 more of heart attacks due to the stress of the 2-hour-long attack. And finally, we have a handful of screen grabs from a video taken by Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich whilst flying an 18F Super Hornet fighter jet over the Pacific Ocean near San Diego during a training mission for the United States Navy. The footage, taken in November of 2004, was captured after Dietrich was asked to investigate a suspicious object that had been seen dropping from 80,000 feet down to the surface of the ocean and then vanishing. When Alex and their colleague arrived on the scene, the ocean's surface, where the object had been reported, appeared as though it was boiling. Moments after arriving to investigate, a strange, elongated white object came into view and was captured on video hovering above the water before it disappeared into the sky at an impossible speed, leaving no wake in the oceans below. While the footage has been confirmed to be authentic by the United States Department of Defense, the object itself, along with its origins, remains a mystery.
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the 1976 Tehran incident. The 1976 Tehran UFO incident is a notable case in UFOlogy that took place on September 19, 1976. The incident involved a luminous object that was observed hovering over the city by 2 F-4 Phantom II jet interceptors of the Iranian Air Force. The object was detected on radar and appeared to be capable of jamming the communication systems of the jets. The pilots reported that they saw a brightly lit diamond-shaped object that emitted a green light, and they attempted to engage it with missiles. However, the object evaded their attempts and quickly disappeared. At a pilots conference in 2007, one of the pilots in this incident, Parvez Jafari, said he attempted to fire at the UFO, but something strange was preventing him from doing so. He said, quote, "My weapons jammed and my radio communications garbled." The incident was investigated by the Iranian government and the US Defense Intelligence Agency, and it has been the subject of much speculation and debate among UFO enthusiasts. Some argue that the incident was evidence of extraterrestrial activity, while others suggest it may have been a secret military experiment or some kind of atmospheric phenomenon. Despite the official investigation, the incident remains unresolved and its true nature remains a mystery. In our number 9 spot today, we have the McMinville UFO photographs. The McMinville UFO photographs are a series of 2 photographs taken by Paul and Evelyn Trent on May 11, 1950 in McMinville, Oregon. The photos depict a metallic disc-shaped object in the sky with trees and buildings visible in the foreground. The Trents claimed that they saw the object hovering in the sky and were able to capture it on camera. The photographs quickly gained widespread attention and were widely circulated in newspapers and magazines, and they were also examined by several experts, including the US Air Force, which conducted an investigation known as Project Blue Book. Famous project here on Most Amazing Top 10. The Trents maintained that the photographs were genuine and that they had not tampered with them in any way. However, some skeptics have suggested that the photographs may have been hoaxed or that the objects in the photographs were just a common object. Despite the controversy surrounding the photographs, however, they remain one of the most famous and well-known UFO sightings in history. The photographs have been the subject of numerous articles, books, and documentaries, and have inspired countless discussions and debates about the existence of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. In our number 8 spot today, we have the USS Nimitz Tic Tac UFO incident. This UFO sighting comes from 2004. On November 14th of that year, the USS Princeton noticed an unknown aircraft of some sort that was about 100 miles off of the coast of San Diego. For 2 weeks prior to this, the crew had been tracking a strange flying object that would start out at about 80,000 feet before extremely quickly dropping to hover right above the Pacific Ocean. Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate went over in 2 fighter jets, and when they arrived, they saw what at first appeared to be churning water while there was an oval shape just below the surface. After this, the white oval-shaped object appeared above the water, but it had no markings on it. Like no windows, nothing that would indicate an engine, no wings, and the infrared monitors on the jets didn't pick up any sort of exhaust. The commander and lieutenant commander tried to intercept this strange aircraft, but it very quickly flew away and reappeared on the monitor 60 miles away. And when I say quickly, I mean it was moving at 3 times the speed of sound and over twice the speed of the fighter jets. So, faster than any kind of technology we currently have. We still don't know exactly what it was, but it certainly was beyond our current capabilities. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Aguadilla Airport incident. The Aguadilla Airport UFO incident occurred on April 25th, 2013, when a strange object was spotted hovering above the Rafael Hernandez Airport in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. The object was initially detected by radar and later confirmed by security cameras as a glowing, unidentified object that appeared to be traveling at a low altitude. The object was described as being around 4 to 5 feet in length, and it moved very quickly and very erratically. It was also observed to emit a bright white light and appeared to be changing shape. The incident attracted widespread attention and was investigated by several government agencies, including the Federal Aviation Administration and the Department of Homeland Security. The object was ultimately classified as an unidentified flying object, or UFO, and no explanation was given for its presence in the area. It is even said that a U.S. Customs and Border Protection aircraft actually captured infrared video of the incident that was given to the Scientific Coalition for UFOlogy by a whistleblower. This video is said to show the UFO traveling at super low altitudes, sometimes lower than the treetops, but at speeds close to 100 miles per hour. The Aguadilla Airport UFO incident is considered one of the most significant UFO sightings in recent history due to the high level of documentation and the involvement of government agencies. It continues to be a topic of discussion and speculation among UFO enthusiasts and researchers, and has contributed to ongoing efforts to uncover the truth about the nature and origin of UFO sightings around the world. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Project Blue Book sighting. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Richard French was once tasked with being an investigator for Project Blue Book, which was the name used to describe a study of UFOs conducted by the United States Air Force from March 1952 to December 17, 1969, when the project was terminated. Okay, we talk about Project Blue Book a lot. You gotta know what it is. While his job was meant to be to investigate and essentially debunk UFO sightings, later in life he took to Congress to stand up and explain his own UFO encounter that he was never able to explain away. The moment that truly stuck with him all of these years took place back in 1952 when he was sent off to Newfoundland after there were reports of a UFO that had crashed off of the coast of St. John's. As he arrived to the scene, there were at least 100 people who all stood and stared into the water, and as he was able to follow their gaze and see what they were all looking at, he couldn't quite believe his eyes. He recalled the water being quite clear, and under it you could see 2 circular crafts, each one approximately 18 feet in diameter. He said that they were both floating just below the surface of the water, no more than 20 feet from the shore, and not only this, but he could also see 2 beings with the crafts. He said, quote, "The first thing I saw was the UFOs, and it was apparent to me that they were doing something to the craft, and I couldn't really tell what because they were on the bottom side of it and not visible to me except when they would occasionally get over to the side where I could see them." He claims he watched on as the beings worked on the craft until one of them raised out of the water and disappeared, but not before accelerating to speeds in the neighborhood of 2,500 to 3,000 miles per hour. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Coyne Mansfield helicopter incident. The Coyne Mansfield helicopter UFO incident occurred on October 18, 1973, when
4 members of the Ohio Army National Guard were flying in a helicopter over Mansfield, Ohio. Suddenly, they encountered a large metallic disc-shaped object that was hovering in the sky. The object began to move towards the helicopter, causing the crew to take evasive maneuvers. Despite their efforts, the object continued to follow them, eventually passing overhead and disappearing into the distance. The crew reported the incident to their superiors, and an investigation was launched by the military and the Federal Aviation Administration. The incident received significant media attention, and it remains one of the most compelling UFO sightings on record. What makes this incident particularly intriguing is the credibility of the witnesses. The crew were all experienced pilots with military training, and their account of the incident was corroborated by radar data and other witnesses on the ground. Despite extensive investigations, no satisfactory explanation has ever been offered for what they saw that day. In our number 4 spot today, we have Apollo 11. So we can sit here on Earth all day and talk about the potential for alien life and UFOs, but who would know more than the people who have actually been to space, which are of course astronauts. Definitely on the list of coolest and scariest jobs in the world. There haven't been a ton of people who have had the unbelievable privilege of experiencing space firsthand, but there are even less of them who have claimed to see something that seems completely unexplainable. People who have claimed these sorts of things include Edgar Mitchell, Catherine Coleman, and Dr. Brian O'Leary. The very interesting part about many of these claims is that they also include some sort of government cover-up as well with their claims. There was also Buzz Aldrin, who spoke about his Apollo 11 experience, and he detailed the crew seeing something flying alongside them, and at first they believed it was the final stage of a detached rocket, but then Mission Control confirmed that it was actually 6,000 miles away from them, leaving them with no answers on what the flying object could be. I can't imagine going to space at all, let alone encountering a UFO flying right beside you. Also, I can't believe that I hadn't heard of that story before, because to me, that sounds like full-blown alien contact. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Go Faster video. In 2017, after the existence of the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program became more well known, a video was released of an encounter between an FA-18 Super Hornet and some sort of unidentified flying object. This video was the third in a series of 3 videos, and there weren't a ton of details released about exactly what happened during this encounter. Using the Raytheon Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared Pod, they were able to capture an extremely fast-moving white oval that was around 45 feet long. The oval had no wings and didn't appear to have any kind of exhaust either. They were tracking the UFO at an altitude of 25,000 feet just above the Atlantic Ocean, and then they were shocked as the craft rotated on its axis and flew away. There was no explanation released with the footage because it truly is unbelievable and currently unexplainable. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Delphos Ring incident. The Delphos Ring UFO incident occurred on November 2nd, 1971 in Delphos, Kansas, when a family witnessed a strange object hovering over their farm. The UFO emitted a bright light that illuminated the surrounding area and left a glowing ring in the ground after it disappeared. The family reported the incident to the local sheriff, who took a sample of the ring for analysis. Investigations were conducted by several experts, including the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, who collected soil samples and found that the ring was caused by the removal of topsoil, which had been exposed to a high amount of heat. Additionally, a high level of radiation was also detected at the site. The incident received widespread media coverage and sparked debates about the existence of extraterrestrial life and the possibility of alien visitation. Some skeptics argued that the incident could have been caused by natural phenomena or a hoax, but the witnesses maintained that they saw a genuine UFO. Despite the years of investigation, it's been no conclusive explanation for the incident has been found, leaving the mystery of the Delphos Ring UFO unsolved. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Shag Harbor incident. This incident took place on October 4th, 1967, when an unknown object crashed into the water near Shag Harbor, which is a tiny town in Nova Scotia. There were at least 11 people who witnessed this object as it crashed, and many people claimed to have heard a whistling sound followed by a loud bang when the crash took place. The witnesses that claimed to have seen the UFO were all doing a bunch of different things at the time. One couple was just sitting out on their porch, but the 2 witnesses that really get me are a flight flight, pilot, and a ship captain. On Air Canada Flight 305, First Officer Robert Ralph pointed out to Captain Pierre Charbonneau that there was something strange out the left side of the aircraft. They reported an object tracking along on a parallel course a few miles away and described it as a brilliantly lit rectangular object with a string of smaller lights trailing it. Shortly after they first noticed it, there was a large but silent explosion near the unknown object, and then 2 minutes later there was a second explosion, but this one faded to a blue cloud. As for the ship captain, Captain Leo Howard Mercy, he saw 4 blips on its Decca radar that were totally stationary. This led to him looking up to the sky, and this is when he saw 4 bright objects sitting in a rectangular formation about 28 kilometers from the vessel's window. He wasn't the only one who saw it on board either. The entire crew of nearly 20 fishermen stood on deck and watched. A man named Laurie Wickens was another one of the witnesses, and he and some friends ended up calling the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, because they saw a huge object floating in the Atlantic Ocean about 1,000 feet offshore. This is all super weird, and not only the RCMP but also the Royal Canadian Navy and the Royal Canadian Air Force became involved in the investigation, but nothing was ever recovered or found. It was also revealed that all commercial, private, and military aircrafts along the eastern seaboard were accounted for, so what could have all those witnesses seen? Since they never officially identified what it was, in the official Government of Canada documents, it is listed as a UFO.
Starting off our list today, we have a 2018 UFO sighting that took place in the skies above North Carolina. Shout out to anyone watching from Elon University. In August of 2018, a man named Javion Hill claims to have spotted a UFO while driving home on US 74 just southwest of Charlotte. He described seeing lights in the clouds above him, shaped like a square. Immediately, he pulled out his phone and began snapping photos, which I have to admit are pretty convincing. After hovering in the sky above Javion for a good amount of time, the illuminated formation just vanished into thin air, as they do. You know how it is. It was as though it had never existed in the first place, but of course it did because there's proof, and we've seen it. And Hill, who says he was never a believer in aliens before that night, claims that during the time in which the object was hovering above him, he was seriously concerned for his safety.
On June 24th, 1947, Kenneth Arnold, a private pilot, saw something in the sky near Mount Rainier in Washington. Something that he couldn't quite explain. He described 9 strange crescent-shaped objects flying in a V formation. What really caught his attention was how fast these things were moving, at around 1,700 miles per hour, which was faster than any known aircraft at the time. And when Arnold reported what he saw, it ended up getting massive media coverage. The Kenneth Arnold sighting is often referenced as the first big UFO encounter in modern times. After Arnold's sighting, lots of other reports started coming in about strange things in the sky across the United States. The government and military were getting intrigued, and the US Air Force started Project Sign, which was the first official government investigation into UFOs. This later became Project Blue Book, which looked into thousands of UFO sightings to try and figure out what was going on. So is it just one of these cases where he saw something and then everybody else started like getting excited and, just thought they were seeing things? Or was this just the time where UFOs and aliens were starting to come down to investigate things here on Earth?
Next up, we have 2 commercial pilots on different aircrafts claiming to have seen a mysterious flying object in the sky while flying above Arizona on February 24th of 2018. The first pilot to spot the UFO called into radio traffic control to ask if another plane had passed by him. The controller answered no, and then went on to make a joke about the pilot having possibly seen a UFO. Ground control then contacted another pilot flying an American Airlines flight a little bit behind the first plane, and asked the pilot to inform the control center if an aircraft were to pass over the plane. And a short while later, the pilot did exactly that. He said that a fast object had flown 3,000 feet over his plane in the opposite direction of which he was going. Once again, ground control had no knowledge of the aircraft, and it didn't show up on any of the radars either. Both pilots later described the objects as illuminated and incredibly fast, saying that they were nothing like the weather balloons they had seen sometimes floating at that altitude before. Plus, there were no records of this object, so what could it have been? Well, a UFO, duh.
Lieutenant Colonel Richard French was the lead investigator of Project Blue Book in the 50s. His job was to investigate reports of UFOs and find any possible explanation for them. Of course, if there was none, it would be categorized as a genuine UFO. French had shot down a lot of UFO reports over the course of his career, but in 1952, he witnessed something himself, something he could only describe as a genuine alien encounter. He kept what he'd seen a secret for decades. It wasn't until 2013 that he testified before 6 former members of Congress in DC, describing an event that happened back in 1952. A number of residents off the coast of St. John's, Newfoundland, had reported spotting 2 unidentified flying objects. So French was tasked with heading over to Canada to basically debunk it. The UFOs had crashed into the water, and when Lieutenant Colonel French arrived, he saw this crowd of about 100 people, including some police, standing by a wharf, gawking at something in the water. French made his way over, and when he looked down into the clear water below, he saw what looked like 2 large circular aircraft-like objects, and there were apparently 2 beings working on them. French described the creatures as, quote, 2 to 3 feet tall, light gray in color, very thin, long arms with either 2 or 3 fingers, the top of their heads much wider than their jawline. Their eyes were very slanted, and you couldn't see pupils in them. He then described the objects slowly rising out from the water before abruptly accelerating and taking off into the sky.
Next up, we have the very first record of a UFO encounter to take place in New England, USA, which I bet you didn't know was actually a major hotspot for extraterrestrial UFO and UAP activity. That's unidentified aerial phenomena, for those of you who don't know. The first recorded sighting happened in Boston, New England, and it was also the first ever documented sighting in the US as a whole. It took place in 1639, and credible reports have been popping up ever since. The record was a second-hand observation recorded by colony founder and governor at the time, John Winthrop, who wrote that a sober, discreet man had seen the sky above Boston become illuminated by a green light while he was rowing his boat along the river one evening. The light was still for a moment and appeared to be flaming, and then it morphed its shape and darted off into the night sky towards Charlestown. The encounter lasted for 3 hours, with the object in the sky going higher into the air and then rushing down closer to Earth again and again, back and forth. By the time it ended, which it did when the object just disappeared into the night, the man along with his boatmates had traveled 1 mile upstream with absolutely no memory of how they had gotten there.
This next one has to be the wildest alien encounter case in recent history. So in March of 2023, something strange went down in a small Bolivian village called Horania. It all started with reports of a mysterious green light hovering in the sky. People whipped out their phones to capture the event, having no idea what the hell they were looking at. But unlike a lot of your typical UFO cases, this one doesn't just end with people seeing something strange in the sky. Things get way weirder. So 2 days later, residents claimed to have seen tiny beings darting around the town at night. One villager, Rita Marquez, described them as little and almost like goblins. Some locals even claimed to have found one of these small creatures dead in a gutter one morning, only for its body to vanish soon after. So, a lot to unpack here. Strange lights, possible aircraft, little beings running around the streets at night, and even a mysterious disappearance of one of these dead creatures. I don't know what to make of this case. Whenever there's a whole bunch of witnesses like this, I find it very interesting though.
Next up, we have Barney and Betty Hill's extraterrestrial encounter, which took place on September 19th of 1961 in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where the couple claimed to have been abducted by aliens. The ordeal started when the pair saw a bright light in the sky around 10:30 p.m. while driving home after a night out. Betty asked Barney to stop the car so that they could get a better look. He did, and then pulled out a pair of binoculars. What they saw was a massive, oddly shaped spacecraft with multicolored lights. They tried to drive away, but the spaceship, which they believed to have been at least 40 feet long, followed them, getting closer and closer until it was hovering directly in front of the pair's car. Barney claims he was able to clearly make out 6 to 8 humanoid figures standing on the ship who instructed Barney and Betty not to move, but rather to just keep looking towards the ship. The next thing the pair remembered, they had driven 35 miles away from their destination with no recollection of doing so. They tried to write down as much as they could about the experience on their way home, but their memories quickly became fragmented. It wasn't until years later, under hypnosis, that the pair separately both recalled being taken onto the ship and then separated from one another and examined by the humanoid alien life forms. In the days after the incident, however, both Betty and Barney's watches stopped working, and Barney noticed tiny circles on the back of his truck, and when he put his compass near them, it went haywire. So, I'm not saying they were telling the truth, but I think they might have been telling the truth.
This next story is very outlandish, but it's an entertaining story, and I haven't talked about it before, so here it goes. Back in 2021, Angelina Lynn Johnston held a news conference in front of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. Johnston claims to be a former retired defense intelligence officer who had an encounter with various alien species at a secret base in the Mojave Desert. She claimed that in January of 2010, a few years before she ran as a Democrat candidate for South Dakota Senate, she had met up with a couple in South Carolina who ended up taking her to this secret base. She didn't provide details on exactly where the base was in the desert, but said that she would be taking an astronaut along with a few scientists to the base, which had been built into the side of a mountain. She described seeing various alien species, including one that looked a bit like a praying mantis type creature, and that the beings all spoke to her through telepathy.
Next up, we have the Exeter incident, which took place in Exeter, New Hampshire in 1965 and actually inspired a best-selling novel, Incident at Exeter: Unidentified Flying Objects Over America Now, by John G. Fuller. Not sponsored. One evening in Exeter, a police officer patrolling Highway Route 101 stopped to check on a woman parked on the side of the road. When he asked her what was wrong, she answered in breathless hysterics. She claimed that a large red flying object with flashing lights had been chasing her. Just a few hours later, the police heard a similar story from another man, a hitchhiker who claimed to have seen 5 bright lights in the sky while walking along Route 150. He told officers that they had been about 100 feet away from where he had stood, and he watched as they hovered over a home before moving over to the airspace above a large field, and then disappearing and reappearing several times. Curious, one of the policemen went with the hitchhiker back to the spot where he claimed to have seen the UFOs, and sure enough, there it was. And another officer arrived shortly after to see the exact same thing: 5 bright lights high up in the sky disappearing into and reappearing from the trees over and over again. And then, over the next few weeks, authorities in Exeter received almost 60 other reports of UFO sightings in the area. So, if you like aliens and UFOs and Exeter was not on your bucket list, you might want to rethink that decision.
Finally, we have a case where 3 UFOs hijacked a pilot's plane in midair. This is about as disturbing a close encounter as it gets, as this man just narrowly escaped death. The pilot's name is Carlos de los Santos. In 1975, he'd been flying back to Mexico City. It was just another routine flight until it wasn't. Carlos spotted something on his right wing. It was this silver disc-like object about 13 feet in length. It was just right on top of the wing. Then he saw an identical object on top of his left wing. And as if that wasn't enough, a third object appeared, and this one was heading straight for him. In a panic, Carlos tried to steer his plane away, but the controls weren't responding. Luckily, the object just missed him though. He frantically radioed air traffic control, explaining that he'd lost control and was surrounded by these strange disc objects. And then, to his complete and utter horror, the plane suddenly veered completely off course. It was now ascending higher and higher up into the sky. Carlos had absolutely no control over the plane now. But then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the strange objects flew away. And miraculously, thankfully, Carlos regained control of the aircraft. Well, there's a lot to worry about up in space. Greys, reptilian aliens, mantis aliens?
If you have any alien encounters, leave them down below.
Yes, please do. We love hearing about your guys' personal experiences.
Oh, we do.
I've been your
Makes
host,
us feel
James.
closer.
Yeah,
I've been your host, Hannah.
we'll catch you next time.
That we will.
Create a video using exactly this script. Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. It's about megalodon attacks that will never make you want to swim in water again. Click the video now to find out more. See you in the next video.